The alien war veteran sat in the vast, echoing chamber of the Imperial High Command, a place where arrogance was measured in light years. The walls shimmered with holograms depicting past conquests, the proud destruction of 1,000 civilizations. The Zarkonian Empire's council, a semicircle of bloated, regal beings with slick blue skin and compound eyes, regarded him with a mixture of amusement and thinly veiled contempt. He had been called here as an advisor, a term that barely concealed its true meaning, a relic dredged up from past wars, meant to provide decorative insight. He had fought in battles long before most of these rulers had hatched from their birthing pods. His body bore the scars of conflicts no one cared to remember, his right arm replaced with a cybernetic limb that still twitched when he was irritated. And right now, he was very, very irritated. "You don't understand what you're about to do," he said, his voice gravelly, the sound of metal grinding over rust. "You think this is just another planet, just another species to break under your boot. You're wrong." Emperor Zarkon 9 leaned forward on his crystalline throne, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smirk. He exuded the casual confidence of someone who had never known failure. "Old soldier, do you think we need a history lesson? Earth is an insignificant type, one civilization. They have no interstellar fleets, no planetary defenses capable of repelling even a fraction of our forces. Their own people are divided into warring factions. Why should we believe they pose any threat to us?" The veteran narrowed his remaining organic eye. "Because humans aren't like the others you've conquered. You think strength comes from numbers, from technological supremacy. They think strength comes from one thing, the refusal to lose." Several of the council members chittered in amusement, as if he had just performed a quaint little trick. One, a particularly rotund Zarkonian noble, waved a claw dismissively. "We have studied them. Their species thrives on self-destruction. War after war, they slaughter each other over arbitrary ideologies. They are irrational." "Yeah," the veteran said, leaning forward, "but they survive. You've seen it yourselves. They don't die when they should. When you break them, they keep fighting. Cut off their supplies, they improvise. Turn their cities to rubble, they fight in the rubble. Hell, take away their damn weapons, and they'll beat you to death with their bare hands." "More primitive brutality," the Emperor mused. "How droll." The veteran clenched his metal fist, the servos whining under the pressure. "I fought against humans once, long before they had even reached Mars. I was young, stronger, faster, smarter, I thought. And yet, I watched my entire unit wiped out by a handful of human soldiers with nothing but scavenged weapons and sheer lunacy driving them. We underestimated them just like you are now." The Emperor flicked his wrist. A floating hologram of Earth appeared, spinning lazily in midair. "We will strike surgically, remove their leadership, shatter their infrastructure, and impose control. Their compliance will follow." The veteran shook his head. "You don't conquer humans. You either kill every single one of them, or you leave them the hell alone." Another noble scoffed. "And why exactly would we waste our resources on extermination when subjugation has worked for every other species?" The veteran exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples with his remaining organic hand. "Because if you take their women, they'll stop fighting each other and come after you." Silence blanketed the chamber. The Emperor's compound eyes blinked in slow succession. "Excuse me." "You heard me," the veteran said. "You can invade their land. You can bomb their cities. You can even take their resources. But if you harm their women, if you take away their daughters, their sisters, their wives, their mothers, then you don't get a war. You get extinction. Yours." The council members exchanged glances, some of them shifting uneasily. It was the first time he had seen any of them consider something outside their usual calculations of conquest. The Emperor, however, was unshaken. "This is sentimentality, a weakness. They will break like all the others." The veteran leaned back, a slow, grim smile creeping onto his face. "Sure. Just don't say I didn't warn you." The invasion began with precision. The Empire's fleets descended upon Earth in an orchestrated display of dominance, blotting out the sky with massive dreadnoughts. Cities fell within hours, their primitive defenses overwhelmed by superior firepower. The Empire's soldiers, clad in shimmering armor, marched through the streets of once proud human capitals, rounding up resistance with ease. For a moment, the High Command congratulated themselves on yet another swift conquest. The war broadcast displayed captured territories, kneeling prisoners, the occasional act of minor rebellion snuffed out with cold efficiency. The humans had been subdued, just as predicted. Then the execution started. The Zarkonians were not needlessly cruel. Their methods were simply effective. A demonstration was always necessary to instill obedience. Public displays of power reinforced submission. And so, as per standard procedure, they executed key hostages. Among them were human women, selected at random, displayed for all to see. The moment the first broadcast hit Earth's networks, humanity changed. It was not the normal, chaotic human response the Empire had seen before. There was no frantic negotiating, no desperate pleas for mercy, no scattered cries of rebellion. Instead, the planet seemed to go eerily quiet. For the first time since the invasion began, Imperial commanders reported an absence of civilian movement. No rogue fighters, no small skirmishes, no attempts to sabotage the occupiers. It was as if the entire planet had taken a collective breath and was holding it. Then the disappearances started. Imperial soldiers began vanishing during patrols. An entire battalion went dark in what was once New York City. No distress signal, no trace. Outposts in rural regions reported strange, distorted sounds on their communicators before going silent. Then the dreadnoughts in orbit detected something that should have been impossible. Imperial warships were being hijacked. The first clear sign of retaliation came when an alien general, sitting comfortably aboard his command cruiser, received a transmission on an open frequency. The signal was crude, patched together from human communication relays, but the message was unmistakable. The screen flickered, revealing a human soldier standing in the ruins of a fallen city. His uniform was scorched, his face smeared with blood and soot, but his eyes burned with a fury that sent a ripple of unease through the Imperial fleet. The soldier spoke with a calm, lethal certainty. "You should have listened." And then, the entire command cruiser's navigation system was overridden, forcing it into a death spiral toward the planet's surface. The next few days were chaos. The humans didn't fight back conventionally. They didn't launch counterstrikes in predictable formations. They fought like they had nothing to lose. Because now they didn't. Imperial forces found themselves facing an enemy that adapted faster than any other species had before. Their own technology was turned against them. Human engineers hijacked their weapon systems. Their encrypted communications were breached by what should have been primitive hackers. Alien soldiers stationed on Earth's surface began encountering horrors they were never trained for. Makeshift traps, guerrilla ambushes, improvised explosives hidden in the corpses of their own fallen. One Imperial officer, desperate and frantic, recorded a final transmission before his outpost was overwhelmed. They aren't fighting for victory. They're fighting for vengeance. The Emperor, upon hearing the reports, remained outwardly composed. But his mandibles twitched, betraying unease. This was not how the conquest was supposed to go. Back in the depths of the Imperial High Command, the war veteran sat in silence, listening to the chaos unfold. He sipped a drink, something bitter, something strong. He had seen this before. He had warned them. And now it was too late. The Zarkonian Empire had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Every engagement followed a pattern. A planet was scouted, its weaknesses catalogued, and its resistance surgically dismantled. The Empire's fleets were vast, their soldiers highly trained, their strategies honed by centuries of conquest. They had never lost a war, not once. And yet, as the weeks passed since the invasion of Earth, something unprecedented began to happen. Reports from the surface painted a picture that defied all known logic. The human resistance, which should have crumbled under the might of the Empire, had instead become something else, something terrifying. At first, the disturbances were minor. Patrol units in urban areas would fail to report back, their comms going silent without so much as a distress signal. Surveillance drones sent to investigate would transmit a few seconds of garbled footage, sometimes of empty streets, sometimes of flickering movement, before cutting out entirely. A transport convoy carrying supplies for the occupation forces disappeared in a region designated as low risk. No wreckage was found. Then the casualties began to mount. Entire garrisons were found slaughtered in the dead of night, their bodies left in grim, deliberate displays. Some had been stripped of their weapons, their armor taken, their helmets filled with human-made explosives that detonated when collected by the next patrol. Imperial soldiers, who had once marched through Earth's cities with an air of absolute dominance, now refused to go out in small numbers. Even the most seasoned among them began to flinch at the sound of the wind, dreading what might be lurking in the shadows. High Command was baffled. The humans weren't fighting a war, they were orchestrating a massacre. The first major counterstrike came in orbit. The Imperial Dreadnought Primacy of Zarkon, one of the fleet's oldest and most prestigious vessels, detected an unauthorized intrusion into its internal network. The ship's AI immediately locked down all systems, identifying a cyber attack of unknown origin. The intrusion should have been impossible. Imperial security firewalls had never been breached. Yet somehow, the ship's systems flickered and failed. Communications scrambled by crude but effective human interference. The final message received before the ship's main reactors detonated was a simple, inexplicable phrase. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" The explosion wiped out 3 surrounding warships and crippled the fleet's main supply line. When investigators examined the remains of the Dreadnought's core systems, they found an ancient human device crudely wired into the ship's mainframe, a battered Windows 95 laptop, somehow still functioning. From that moment, the war shifted. The humans had adapted in ways the Empire had never anticipated. They scavenged alien weaponry, reverse-engineered ships, repurposed captured technology into instruments of absolute chaos. Human scientists, given only weeks to study Zarkonian hardware, had devised ways to not only use it, but to improve upon it. Their weapons, once primitive by galactic standards, were now powered by energy cores that should have been decades beyond their reach. Their outdated digital systems, previously considered a weakness, had become a nightmarish advantage. The Zarkonians' sophisticated AI struggled against human-created viruses built with absurd simplicity, as though their very backwardness made them unpredictable. In one recorded incident, an Imperial general ordered a planetary defense shield reactivated over a captured human city. The controls failed. A screen flashed with a message in crude Zarkonian script. Error 404. Your empire not found. Seconds later, the entire system was hijacked, the shield reversing polarity and trapping the Imperial forces inside as human artillery pounded them from beyond the perimeter. The retaliation spread like wildfire. Zarkonian supply routes collapsed as raiding parties, seemingly composed of ordinary human civilians, began hijacking cargo ships and repurposing them for their own war efforts. A fleet of what should have been non-threatening merchant vessels, retrofitted with stolen Imperial plasma cannons, launched a surprise attack on an armory world, reducing it to smoldering wreckage. The battlefields became unpredictable nightmares for the invaders. Human soldiers, wearing scavenged armor, used guerrilla tactics that defied conventional logic. They set traps disguised as broken-down vehicles, packed with enough explosive power to obliterate entire regiments. They built holographic decoys that led elite Zarkonian strike teams straight into ambushes. Even in one-on-one combat, the humans were proving impossible to suppress. Zarkonian warriors were genetically engineered for strength, speed, and endurance. A standard human should have been physically inferior. But the problem wasn't their bodies, it was their mentality. A single recorded instance from a downed Imperial officer's body cam provided insight into the madness. A Zarkonian commando engaged a lone human in close-quarters combat. The human, badly injured, should have surrendered or attempted to flee. Instead, he grinned through bloodied teeth and muttered something unintelligible before lunging forward with a knife. The officer barely managed to kill him. Upon later investigation, the recording was translated. The human's last words had been, "If I go, I'm taking your ugly ass with me." The Empire had made the mistake of assuming humanity feared death. They did not. They weaponized it. The Resistance had no central command structure, no obvious weak point to target. It was a decentralized network of fighters, engineers, and hackers operating with brutal efficiency. Some of them were soldiers by training, but others were ordinary civilians who had been pushed beyond their limits. A retired schoolteacher personally designed EMP mines using scraps from downed alien drones. A group of rural farmers rigged a stolen Imperial Walker to function as a beer-powered death machine, a crude but terrifyingly effective war mech fueled by bioethanol distillate. But it wasn't just the technology. It was the mindset. The Zarkonians had expected submission. Instead, they had unleashed something that could not be controlled. Imperial reinforcements were sent. They arrived to find their occupied cities eerily silent. No civilians. No enemy soldiers in sight. Then, out of nowhere, the chaos erupted. Ambushes from underground tunnels, sniper fire from rooftops, homemade rocket launchers taking out armored divisions. The reinforcement fleets were caught off guard. And then came the final insult. A hijacked Imperial warship, broadcasting on all Imperial frequencies, played a human transmission on loop. It was a piece of ancient human culture, a song from a time before interstellar war, before humanity had even left its own solar system. The Zarkonians listened in horrified confusion as an aggressive, rhythmic voice chanted across their comm channels. "Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down." The Empire had not only been outfought, it had been rickrolled. The Emperor watched in stunned silence as his fleets fell into chaos. His once invincible armada was collapsing under the weight of sheer absurdity. His soldiers, terrified and demoralized, abandoned their posts in record numbers. His generals, panicked and furious, demanded harsher countermeasures. The old war veteran, watching from the shadows, allowed himself a grim smile. He had warned them. Now, there was no stopping what came next. The Imperial Palace of Zarkon Prime stood as a monolithic testament to the Empire's power. Black stone spires stretched toward the artificial crimson sky, their surfaces engraved with the names of conquered worlds. The Grand War Chamber, a vast domed hall where victories were plotted and insurrections crushed, now pulsed with the uneasy glow of crisis alerts. Holographic projections of the ongoing Earth campaign flickered across the room, each new report more disastrous than the last. Emperor Zarkon IX sat in the center of it all, his enormous form coiled within the elaborate throne of his ancestors. His compound eyes twitched as he read the latest intelligence. Entire fleets lost, occupation forces obliterated, warships turned against them. The humiliation was unbearable. The humans had not just resisted. Their retaliation had escalated into an outright existential threat. The room stank of fear. His advisors, once haughty and dismissive, now whispered among themselves in urgent, hushed tones. There was no longer talk of pacification or efficient governance. Only desperate calculations of survival. "Explain," the Emperor commanded, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. High Marshal Rilthok, one of the few remaining officers who had not yet fled or met an untimely demise, swallowed hard before stepping forward. His ceremonial armor, once pristine, was dented and stained with the grime of endless emergency meetings. "Your Majesty, the humans, they have adapted beyond all projections. Their weapons are no longer crude. They've begun modifying our own technology faster than we can counteract it. Their soldiers do not operate under conventional doctrine. They fight like madmen, no formations, no retreat, no hesitation." His mandibles clicked in frustration. They do not seem to fear death. The Emperor's grip tightened on the armrest of his throne. "We have fought species more advanced than them and emerged victorious. What makes these creatures different?" Rilthok exhaled sharply. "Their unpredictability. Their ability to weaponize the absurd. They are not merely resisting, they are toying with us." The Emperor gestured sharply, and a new hologram materialized. showing an intercepted human communication. A grainy, battle-scarred human male stared directly into the feed, his face a twisted mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "If you're getting this message," the human said, voice rough but eerily calm, "then congratulations. You've officially pissed us off beyond reason." He grinned, flashing blood-stained teeth. "You should have left our women alone. But you didn't. So now we're coming for everything you've got." The feed cut out, replaced by a chaotic flood of human war chants, distorted laughter, and, inexplicably, ancient Earth music. Zarkonian officers flinched as the walls of the Grand War Chamber reverberated with a bizarre, rhythmic chant. Thunder, thunder, th, thunder. A warship had been hijacked again. This time it wasn't merely turned against the Empire. It was being used as a mobile broadcasting station to play AC/DC on every Imperial channel. The Emperor's claws carved deep grooves into his throne's armrests. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were mocking the might of the Empire itself. He turned his gaze to the war veteran who had warned them all. The aged alien sat in a shadowed corner of the chamber, arms folded, expression grimly amused. "You knew," the Emperor growled. "You knew this would happen." The veteran shrugged. "I told you." The Emperor's rage nearly boiled over, but he forced himself to focus. There was still a chance to end this before it spiraled completely out of control. He turned to Rilthok. "Deploy the Omega Fleet. No more holding back. If they want annihilation, we will give it to them." Rilthok hesitated. "Your Majesty, the Omega Fleet is—" "Unleash it," the Emperor ordered. "Wipe Earth from existence." The room fell silent. The Omega Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a last-resort armada designed not for conquest, but for obliteration. Entire planets had been reduced to cosmic debris in its wake. There would be no civilization left to rebuild, no resistance left to fight. And so, the order was given. Across the Imperial core systems, war factories flared to life, producing weapons of apocalyptic scale. Planet-sized dreadnoughts, bristling with enough firepower to reduce entire solar systems to dust, assembled at the fringes of hyperspace gates. The Empire's last and greatest show of force was underway. Earth did not wait for the storm to arrive. Humanity, in all its reckless defiance, took the fight directly to the Empire's heart. The first attack came without warning. A human task force, composed of stolen Imperial vessels, retrofitted freighters, and what could only be described as a weaponized space station repurposed from an old NASA research facility, emerged from hyperspace over the planet Zarlan 5, an Imperial stronghold. The defenders barely had time to react before the orbital platforms were disabled, their own targeting systems hacked and redirected to fire upon each other. Ground troops scrambled to respond, only to find their comms jammed with human music, battle cries, and an unrelenting loop of action movie quotes. A single message, broadcast on every Imperial frequency, sent shivers through the command hierarchy. "Hold my beer." The humans did not fight conventionally. They used deception, chaos, and sheer audacity. They hijacked entire starports, replacing landing signals with fake Imperial orders that caused reinforcements to dock directly into ambush zones. They repurposed orbital debris as kinetic projectiles, turning harmless wreckage into deadly hypersonic spears that tore through Imperial hull plating. Even the Emperor's personal fleet was not spared. His flagship, the Wrath of Zarkon, was infiltrated by a single human pilot who had managed to eject from his stolen fighter and land undetected within a docking bay. With nothing but a sidearm and an ancient thumb drive, the pilot bypassed the security grid and plugged in a USB device containing a virus so primitive that the Imperial systems, unable to recognize it, simply shut down in confusion. The last transmission from the Wrath of Zarkon was a human voice whispering over the comms. "Game over, man. Game over." The Emperor watched in horror as his fleets collapsed. The Omega Fleet, his ultimate weapon, was now being dismantled before it even reached Earth. The humans were not merely defending themselves. They were dismantling the Zarkonian war machine piece by piece, turning the Empire's own technology into tools of its destruction. His advisors, once so confident in their superiority, now cowered in desperation. "They will come here," one whispered, voice trembling. "They will reach Zarkon Prime." The Emperor knew it was true. The humans would not stop. They would not negotiate. They would not forgive. He had not merely provoked an enemy. He had created one that would never rest until his empire was nothing but ruins and cautionary tales. The war veteran, still sitting in the shadows, let out a long, slow sigh. He had seen this before. He had tried to warn them, but now it was too late. Humanity was coming, and there would be no mercy. Zarkon Prime burned. The once imposing heart of the Galactic Empire, a world of towering spires and endless war factories, was now a wasteland of shattered citadels and choking smoke. The sky, once artificially tinted red as a sign of imperial dominance, was now streaked with black plumes of destruction, casting an eerie twilight over the broken capital. The imperial palace, a structure meant to stand for eternity, was gutted, half-collapsed, its once impervious walls torn apart by kinetic bombardments and human ingenuity. The final assault had been swift, brutal, and, above all, relentless. The human war machine, once thought primitive, had become an unstoppable force. They had taken what the Empire threw at them, learned from it, and turned it back tenfold. The war had not just been won, it had been rewritten. No alien race had ever fought like this. No alien race had ever ended an empire in such a spectacular, crushing manner. At the shattered gates of the Imperial Palace, a lone figure trudged forward. The war veteran, the one who had warned them all, now walked through the ruins of the once mighty empire. His old cybernetic arm, battered and dented, twitched slightly as he surveyed the devastation. He stepped over the bodies of Zarkonian soldiers, some still clutching weapons, others frozen mid-flight, as if their minds had not fully processed what had happened. The battle had been over for hours, but the humans were still cleaning up. Above, captured Imperial warships loomed over the capital, their banners replaced with crude human graffiti. Some of it was crude insults, some of it was simple, devastating truths. Earth sends its regards. Others were just absurd. One of the most massive dreadnoughts, responsible for glassing entire planets, now bore a single mocking phrase: "Aliens suck at war." The war veterans smirked bitterly. A group of human soldiers, their armor a mix of scavenged alien plating and human military-grade composites, dragged Zarkonian officers from the ruins. Some struggled, others didn't bother. They knew their empire was over. One of the humans, a lean, scarred man with a cigar clenched between his teeth, nodded as the veteran approached. "Didn't think it'd be this easy," the soldier muttered, exhaling a plume of smoke. "I mean, sure, we knew they were idiots, but this was embarrassing." The veteran gave a tired chuckle. "Told them." They didn't listen. Another human, a young woman with a streak of grease on her face and a modified plasma rifle slung over her shoulder, snorted. "Well, they listen now." She jerked her head toward the remnants of the Imperial High Command, where human officers were setting up a makeshift tribunal. Or, at least, the ones still breathing do. The Emperor had been the first to fall. He had refused to surrender, refused to acknowledge that the war was over. So, when the humans breached his throne room, he had done the only thing his pride allowed. He charged them himself. It hadn't lasted long. The war veteran had seen many things in his life, but the sight of an imperial ruler trying to punch a human marine in power armor was one of the more ridiculous. The marine had simply stepped aside, watched the Emperor stumble forward in disbelief, then shot him in the back of the head. A fitting end. The veteran's boots crunched over shattered pieces of Zarkonian architecture as he made his way toward the massive plaza, where humanity had gathered its surviving enemies for judgment. It was not a negotiation. It was a reckoning. A makeshift podium had been erected, scrap metal welded together from the remains of an imperial transport. On it, a human officer stood, reading out charges against the captured Zarkonian elite: genocide, enslavement, unprovoked planetary annihilation. The charges were met with silence. The officer's voice remained calm. By human law, and by the universal standard of decency, you are guilty of war crimes beyond measure." He paused, then smirked. "And considering we only just got into the galactic community, that's saying something." The veteran watched as one of the highest-ranking surviving Zarkonian nobles, his once glorious robes, now reduced to rags, trembled. "We surrender," the noble croaked. "We submit to your rule. Please spare us." The human officer sighed. "You misunderstand. The Zarkonians weren't being subjugated. They were being left to rot. Humanity wasn't interested in ruling them. They had no interest in governing a broken empire. They were simply making sure it never rose again." One by one, the captured leaders were exiled, dumped onto barren, uninhabited worlds, left with only the barest means of survival. The remaining Zarkonian populace, now leaderless and aimless, would have to fend for themselves in the ruins of their own arrogance. It was mercy in its cruelest form. A distant explosion rumbled as yet another war factory was purged. Even now, human forces were dismantling the last remnants of Zarkonian military infrastructure. The galaxy had changed forever, and there was no going back. The veteran exhaled, watching the final embers of the war flicker and die. A human pilot strolled past, flipping a coin idly between his fingers. He stopped, glanced at the veteran, then smirked. "So," he said, "what's next?" The veteran tilted his head, considering the question. Humanity had gone from a conquered world to the dominant power in the galaxy in record time. The war had forged them into something unstoppable. There was no enemy left to fight. For the first time in history, humanity stood at the top of the food chain. The pilot flipped the coin one last time, then caught it with a grin. "Guess we'll see."